Hello, little ones. This is the story of Hansel and Gretel. Once upon a time, in a small village at the edge of a vast, dark forest, there lived a poor woodcutter with his second wife and 2 children. The boy was called Hansel, and his sister was named Gretel. They were kind, loving children who helped their father gather wood, though their stepmother was often cold and distant toward them. But times were hard, my friends, very hard indeed. The harvests had been poor for 3 years running, and food was so scarce that the family often went to bed with empty bellies, listening to the growling of their hungry stomachs echoing in the quiet night. One terrible evening, when there was barely a crust of bread left in the house, the children overheard their parents whispering by the dying fire. "We cannot feed them any more," said their stepmother, her voice cold as winter wind. "Tomorrow we must take them deep into the forest and leave them there. It's the only way we'll survive." The woodcutter's heart broke at these words. "I cannot abandon my children," he cried. "They are the light of my life." But his wife was stern and desperate. "Then we shall all starve together," she said firmly. "Choose, husband, them or us." Little Hansel, who had been listening at the door, crept back to bed where Gretel lay crying softly into her pillow. "Don't worry, dear sister," Hansel whispered, holding her hand tight. "I have a plan." While everyone slept, brave Hansel tiptoed outside into the moonlit yard. The ground sparkled with white pebbles that shone like stars fallen to earth. He filled his pockets with as many as he could carry, each one smooth and bright. The next morning came grey and cold. "Come, children," said their stepmother with false cheerfulness. "We're going into the forest to gather wood. Your father needs help with his work." As they walked deeper and deeper into the woods, Hansel secretly dropped the white pebbles behind them, one by one, creating a trail that glittered in the patches of sunlight filtering through the trees. When they reached the very heart of the forest, where the trees grew so thick that barely any light could penetrate, their parents stopped. "Rest here, children," said their father, his voice heavy with sorrow. "Your stepmother and I will gather wood nearby. We'll be back soon." But as the hours passed and the sun began to set, painting the forest in deep shadows, Hansel and Gretel realized the terrible truth. Their parents were not coming back. Gretel began to cry, but Hansel took her hand. "Look, sister," he said, pointing to the ground. There, gleaming in the moonlight, was their trail of white pebbles leading like a silver river back toward home. Hand in hand, they followed the pebbles through the dark forest, past sleeping owls and curious deer, until they saw the warm glow of their cottage windows in the distance. Oh, how surprised their parents were to see them! Their father wept with joy and hugged them tight, for his heart had been breaking all day. Even their stepmother pretended to be happy, though her eyes remained cold. But happiness, like bread, does not last long when there is little of it to share. Soon, the family was hungry again, and once more the children heard those dreaded whispers in the night. "This time," said the stepmother, "we'll take them so far that they'll never find their way back." Again, Hansel tried to collect pebbles, but this time the door was locked tight. All he could take was a small piece of bread from breakfast, which he crumbled in his pocket as they walked. Deeper and deeper into the forest they went, farther than they had ever been before. And Hansel dropped crumbs behind them, hoping they would mark the way home. But when night fell and they were alone again, a terrible thing had happened. The birds of the forest, hungry themselves, had eaten every single crumb. There was no trail to follow, no way to find home. For 3 days and 3 nights, the children wandered through the endless forest. They ate berries and drank from clear streams, but they grew weaker and more frightened with each passing hour. Just when they thought all hope was lost, they saw something that made them rub their eyes in wonder. Through the trees ahead, Something was gleaming and sparkling like jewels in the sunlight. As they came closer, they gasped in amazement. There, in a clearing surrounded by flowers, stood the most extraordinary house they had ever seen. The walls were made of gingerbread, dark and sweet. The roof was covered with cakes and cookies. The windows were clear spun sugar, and the door was made of the finest chocolate. "It can't be real," whispered Gretel, but Hansel was already running forward, his hunger overcoming his caution. He broke off a piece of the gingerbread wall and took a bite. It was delicious. Gretel nibbled on a sugar window, and it tasted like the sweetest candy. They ate and ate, filling their empty stomachs for the first time in days, when suddenly the chocolate door creaked open. Out stepped an old woman, bent and crooked, leaning heavily on a walking stick. But her voice was sweet as honey. "Oh, you poor hungry children, come in, come in. I have so much more food inside." She led them into her house, where tables groaned under the weight of wonderful food. Pancakes and milk, apples and nuts, cakes and cookies of every kind. The children ate until they could eat no more, and then the kind old woman tucked them into beds with clean white sheets. "Sleep well, my dears," she whispered. "Tomorrow will be a wonderful day." But the old woman was not what she seemed. Oh no, she was something far more terrible. She was a witch who had built her house of sweets to lure children. For witches, you see, liked nothing better than to cook and eat little boys and girls. The next morning she grabbed poor Hansel and locked him in a cage outside the house. "You're too skinny," she cackled, her kind voice now harsh and cruel. "I must fatten you up before I cook you." And to Gretel she gave the hardest work, cleaning, cooking, and carrying water, while Hansel sat trapped in his cage. Every day the witch would hobble out to check on Hansel. "Stick out your finger, boy," and "Let me feel if you're fat enough yet." But clever Hansel had found an old chicken bone in his cage. The witch, whose eyes were dim with age, would feel it and shake her head. "Still too skinny. We must feed you more." This went on for weeks, but finally the witch grew impatient. "Fat or thin," she declared, "I'll cook you tomorrow." The next morning she ordered Gretel to light the great oven. "Make it nice and hot," she commanded. "I want to bake some bread before I cook your brother." When the oven was blazing hot, the witch said, "Crawl inside and tell me if it's ready." But brave Gretel was not foolish. She knew the witch meant to push her in and cook her too. "I don't know how," Gretel said innocently. "Can you show me?" The witch, eager to get on with her wicked plan, bent down and stuck her head into the oven. "Like this, you silly girl." Quick as lightning, Gretel gave the witch a mighty push, sending her tumbling into the hot oven. She slammed the door shut and locked it tight. Then she ran to free her brother. "Hansel, Hansel, the witch is gone. We're free." Together, they explored the witch's house and found chests full of pearls and precious stones. They filled their pockets with all the treasure they could carry. "Now," said Hansel, "we must find our way home." They walked and walked through the forest until they came to a wide lake that blocked their path. There was no bridge, no boat, nothing to help them cross. But then Gretel saw a beautiful white duck swimming on the water. "Dear duck," she called, "please help us cross this lake." The kind duck swam to shore and carried them across, one at a time, safely to the other side. As they continued walking, the forest began to look familiar. The trees seemed friendlier, the paths more welcoming. And then, through the branches, they saw it, their own little cottage, with smoke rising from the chimney. They ran the last distance and burst through the door, straight into their father's arms. He had not had a single happy moment since they left, and he wept with joy to see them safe. "Your stepmother is gone," he told them. "She left when times grew even harder. It's just us now, but we'll never be separated again." When Hansel and Gretel showed him the pearls and precious stones, their worries about hunger ended forever. They sold the treasures in the village and bought food, warm clothes, and everything they needed. From that day forward, they lived happily together, and never again did anyone in their family go to bed hungry. The children grew up strong and kind, never forgetting the lessons they learned in the dark forest, that love and cleverness can overcome even the greatest dangers, and that sometimes, when we think all is lost, help comes from the most unexpected places. And if they haven't moved away, they're living there still, in their cozy cottage at the edge of the forest, where the fire always burns bright, and there's always enough food to share with anyone who might be hungry.